It's a Man Crush Monday. Join Professor Buzzkill as he crushes on men from history who deserve more fame and glory.
Yes, it's the professor here with another Man Crush Monday, and we have one of my man crushes here in the Buzzkill Bunker in the studio, Professor Phil Nash from Penn State. How are you, sir?
Wait, back up. You have other man crushes?
Yes, I have several, including
right,
you.
We're going to have a talk.
We have to figure out a hashtag for hashtag PNP or something. We want to talk this week about one of the most interesting American men of the early 20th century, and the one who you sort of hear about, and there have been media things about him, but he's not nearly well known enough, and that is...
That would be Melvin Purvis.
Melvin Purvis.
Or to be more accurate, Melvin Horace Purvis II.
This has to be the most boring name ever. Did he sell cornflakes for a living?
He should have been a Foreign Service officer with that name.
It just so like CIA would people.
Exactly. If that's a good cover.
If the KGB ran across this name, they would be sure it was a fake cover. That was some TV show.
Exactly.
Who was he?
Who is Melvin Purvis? Well, born in South Carolina in 1903. He was 5'3".
Oh.
Which, I could totally dunk on him.
Yeah.
So...
he was in the FBI later. I don't think you could get into the FBI.
They obviously had no height minimum in the FBI. He was actually known as Little Mel,
there you
which
go.
I'm assuming was affectionate. He actually got a law degree.
Oh, right.
He was, so my understanding is one of the more highly educated FBI officials, and apparently also a crack shot with his sidearm.
Wow.
Joined the FBI in 1927. If you look at the dates involved, obviously rose pretty quickly.
If he joined the FBI in 27, that's early in the FBI's history.
That is.
Okay.
The FBI really only exists starting around depending on how you date it. 1924 is when Hoover becomes head of it.
Right.
It changes its name a few times.
Right.
I think it's just called the Bureau of Investigation at one point.
The BI.
The BI, exactly. They needed to add an F. So... Yeah, but you're right. 1927 is still pretty early in the history of the FBI. He is made head of the FBI Chicago office by J. Edgar Hoover in 1932.
So second biggest city in the country, and he's the head of it in 5 years.
So, the FBI is also expanding very quickly, but still, he's obviously a star.
Yeah.
The rising star in the FBI.
Now, the early 30s, that's a big time for...
The timing is interesting because that's just before this famous wave of Depression-era gangsterism.
Yes, when we know these names.
Yes, these are the OGs. This is especially 1933, 34, there really is sort of this plague, especially in the Midwest, of these old school gangsters. They become famous, movies and radio shows. Even today, we sort of, I think, overly glamorize some of these people.
Oh, we certainly overly glamorize
people like John Dillinger and Pretty Boy Floyd and Babyface Nelson, Bonnie and Clyde, et cetera, a whole bunch of folks. And by the way, and a lot of them had colleagues. They had gangs of people you never hear about. So it's not just these few individuals. They just start...
colleagues, I think.
I yield to the gentleman. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that was the wrong word.
My colleagues.
Mr. Nelson, I presume. So they launched this sort of wave of terror, and I think it's not just... I think sometimes we not only glamorize them, but we make them seem more harmless than they are.
Oh,
they're not just bank robbers; they're murderers, they're kidnappers.
Right.
These are some bad people.
Yeah, and they weren't fighting the man for good causes.
No, and they weren't distributing their money far and wide.
No.
Jesse James didn't do that, and they didn't do that either. In any case, they became a huge priority for the FBI.
Right.
And this is, by the way, it's partly bureaucratic. The FBI is trying to establish its own importance, and these are crimes that often happen across state lines.
Oh, okay.
Right, and so they include multiple state manhunts, and it becomes very difficult for... It's one of the things the gangsters are exploiting, actually, is the fact that law enforcement have to stay within state bounds.
Okay.
And they don't have modern communications, a lot of them.
Yeah.
They don't have modern crime-fighting techniques, so it's really easy to sort of exploit those loopholes. And so the FBI argues that they should be the ones who are responsible for these sorts of crimes.
That's probably why the FBI grows so quickly.
That's one of the reasons, absolutely. Right. Because it's embarrassment for law enforcement nationwide that someone like John Dillinger can escape from jail by, carving a fake handgun out of a bar of soap and hitting it with some shoe polish and getting out of jail.
And then only has got to do to get to the state line.
Exactly. Well, and also the FBI also got sort of played in some of these incidents.
Oh, right, okay.
So it becomes remember, this is the period of the sort of public enemy number one.
Right.
The FBI has its official list. So this is partly about promoting the FBI, but it's also partly about solving some really bad crimes.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes huge in popular culture. You have movies and radio shows. The G-Man becomes this really powerful sort of cultural figure. And in any case, Purvis actually led the manhunts for some of these leading bad guys, including Babyface Nelson, Pretty Boy Floyd, and especially John Dillinger.
Yeah.
He was sort of led the stakeout. He had help, like the FBI often had. Dillinger, of course, is famously shot down outside the Biograph Theater in Chicago, late July 1934. Mm-hmm. And apparently, Purvis later admitted to having been so nervous during the stakeout, like when he was lying in wait for Dillinger, he was shaking really badly, and so later on he was known as Nervous Purvis. It's a nickname that writes itself.
Yeah. So did he shoot Dillinger?
I don't think so, but he was there on the scene and obviously sort of orchestrated this whole takedown of John Dillinger.
Okay.
And John Dillinger was probably the most notorious and the most wanted of all of these folks, and the most sort of elusive. And so you might ask yourself, like, sort of, what's the problem? The problem is that Purvis, especially after taking down Dillinger, Purvis got enormous media attention. He was lionized in the newspapers.
Yeah.
And if I can just add into this point, ultimately, as of 1937, Parker Brothers actually sells a board game called, and I'm quoting, Melvin Purvis G-Man Detective Game.
Oh, well, when you made it to Parker Brothers, you really made it.
It's a cover of the Rolling Stone, essentially, in the 1930s. So the problem is short-term, as of 1934, is that he has overshadowed the director of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover.
Oh, okay.
And if anyone looks into J. Edgar Hoover's biography, you'll find that, among other things, he was a relentless publicity hound.
Yeah.
Those famous pictures of him sort of posing with a Tommy gun as if he ever actually went out into the field.
Yeah.
He didn't. But he really was obsessed with not only building the FBI's image, but his own image.
Yeah. And
he didn't want to be challenged by anyone on that score from within the organization.
He didn't go so far as to say, well, I killed John Dillinger. Right?
No, but he doesn't like the idea of any of his underlings getting as much or more print than he does.
Okay, and getting a Parker's game board game is about as good as you can get.
Right, so. And he wants to, when the FBI is in the media, he wants to see Hoover, not Purvis.
Ah.
So it's pretty clear from what I've seen that that's the main reason that Hoover takes action. And by that I mean, after Dillinger is taken down, Hoover claims publicly that he had demoted Purvis before Dillinger was killed.
Yeah.
It was basically retroactively demoted, claiming that Purvis couldn't have been involved as much as we think because I had already demoted him, and so other people deserve the credit.
And this is sort of publicly, or how?
Yeah. He said this publicly.
Weird. That's weird.
Yeah. If anyone paying attention at the time would have like smelled a rat. Like, wow, what's going on here? Why didn't you announce that at the time? Right? Because it's not like Purvis. It's not like Purvis was a no name before Dillinger was killed.
Right. Okay.
So in any case, just to sort of move the story along here, the next year, 1935, is when Purvis quits the FBI.
Oh, 1935. So he's barely in it 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, 8
years. Yeah.
In fact, he lives until 1960. So his in terms of years, his FBI stint is just this tiny little sliver.
Wow.
He practices law the rest of his life. Right. He has a law degree. That's what he does. He lives quietly. He does write a book.
Yeah.
He dies in 1960 of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And the gun was a gun that the FBI, his FBI, and I'll use the term colleagues. His FBI colleagues had given him as a gift.
Oh.
From what I've seen, it's not clear whether this was suicide or an accident.
Right, cleaning the gun.
Yeah, but apparently there may have been, what I saw is that apparently a tracer round may have gotten jammed in it, and in trying to clear the jam. Happens a lot in the gun world, right?
Yeah.
You got to be careful when you're cleaning a gun that might have a round chambered. But in any case, he dies in 1960. I should add, I do not want to overly glorify Melvin Purvis. Nobody's perfect.
Right, yeah, sure.
Even Nervous Purvis was not perfect. He was known for his brutal, and today in some ways they would be illegal, interrogation methods.
Okay.
Well, I read about one suspect who was basically suffered grievous bodily injury in FBI hands.
Right. And even that wasn't illegal back then?
Oh, well, good point. It would have been illegal maybe if it had come to light.
Oh, right.
And then you'd have the trouble, as you do today, of actually prosecuting someone for it.
Sure, because you can say that in getting caught, they got hurt.
But he may have been 5'3", but he was certainly capable of ferocity in the interrogation room. It's also, in at least one case, he also himself apparently did not like to share credit with local law enforcement.
Oh. So there's something going on in the FBI.
Yeah, well, exactly. Good point. It's sort of maybe it's a cultural thing, but yeah, he himself, when it comes to the killing of Pretty Boy Floyd in particular, at the time he doesn't really want to give local law enforcement any credit for it, but apparently they deserve some.
Oh, okay.
So there's always shades of gray here, right? There's no, I'm not trying to make Hoover complete evil and Purvis into Sir Lancelot.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to do that, but he definitely deserves a lot of the credit for taking down some of the worst outlaws in the early 1930s. It was not just J. Edgar Hoover personally.
Right. Before we started talking about this, before we turned the microphones on, we were both complaining about how glorified, Dillinger and Pretty Boy Floyd, especially Bonnie and Clyde, become. And it's really, really crazy. And because they are very bad people.
Yes, absolutely.
And so the people who bring them down, the people who capture them and throw them in the slammer or get them killed, really do need more attention.
Absolutely. I mean, and think about it this way. I mean, today, in 2018, some of the worst criminals out there are the people who kill law enforcement officers.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
They're like we all want to just completely throw the book at them, give them maximum sentences. They're like the worst killers out there. When you kill a cop, but somehow these people who kill cops all the time. Wow, what a great guy! What a Robin Hood! It's like this just makes no sense to me at all.
Yeah, they steal from everybody, then keep it for themselves.
Right.
There's no redistribution of income.
No, this is greed and violence, pretty much.
Well, there you have it, Buzzkillers. Melvin Horace Purvis, our Man Crush Monday for this week. Talk to you next week.